Is climate change happening, and if so, what do you think is causing it?
It could be the natural evolution of this planet. It could be. Or else it could be something that we are actually doing to it.
I think the planet's just hitting back now, and it's had enough. It's definitely not the aliens anyway, It's Mother Nature.
100% I think it's down to humans, yeah. Largely it's down to animal agriculture.
Climate has always changed. We were under hundreds of metres of ice here at one time, so it's a natural thing that climate changes. The important question is the current, what's the component that's man-made? And that we don't really know.
You're right that climate change is always happening. The climate's always changed, even when human beings weren't on Earth. So, for instance, the last couple of million years, we've had repeated glaciations when this house would have been under permafrost conditions, permanently frozen ground. But we know the reason why climate change has occurred in the past, and that's to do with the way in which the Earth goes around the sun. And that's well known. We've known about that since about the 1930s. But what we're doing now is we are artificially putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and that's a greenhouse gas. And the vast majority of this extra carbon dioxide which is going into the atmosphere is coming from us. It's coming from burning of fossil fuels. We've known since the 1850s or so that if you put a greenhouse gas in the atmosphere has to warm up. It can't do anything else.
I'm a glaciologist and I study the ice sheet in Antarctica. The Antarctic ice sheet is an amazing time machine. Ice has little air bubbles within it, and those air bubbles capture the atmosphere from the time that the ice was snow on the surface. It tells us that the level of CO2 for the last 700, 800,000 years goes between 180 parts per million and 280 parts per million until about 1850. And that's when we started burning fossil fuels, literally at an industrial scale. The level of CO2 now is 420 parts per million, so much, much higher than it's been probably for 5 million years or so.
Humans have put about 2.5 trillion tonnes of carbon dioxide into the Earth's atmosphere. Now the good news is the natural carbon cycle will remove that. The process of weathering and the transport of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into the seas and into rocks. The bad news is it's going to take about 100,000 years because it's a very slow process. So what humans have done over geological timescales is this kind of instantaneous input of a vast amount of CO2. And when we see that happening in Earth's distant past, let's say, these have been events which have been associated with mass extinction because it's been associated with very rapid and dramatic climate change. Probably before our industrial activities, the Earth was cooling. It was beginning to enter maybe the next ice age, but we're talking tens of thousands of years. We might have actually interrupted that cycle indefinitely and perhaps even permanently because we are now pretty much driving the climate.
And one of the main things to consider is how fast is the climate changing, because if it changes slowly, we see things that we can adapt to fairly slowly. But when the climate changes rapidly, that's when it becomes really dangerous. So what we're seeing now is a type of climate change that hasn't been happening very much, certainly throughout human history. And if you need a smoking gun, as it were, one thing to consider is that when you burn fossil fuels, the carbon that's created has a unique chemical composition. So you can tell by measuring the carbon in the atmosphere how much of it has come from fossil fuel burning.
Yes, the Earth's climate is changing all the time, but most of what we're seeing now is happening because of humans burning fossil fuels. And it's happening way faster than anything that can be explained by natural processes.